Israeli Defense Minister confirms Syrian rebel claims that the Assad regime used a non-lethal chemical weapon late last month on the outskirts of Damascus. Crisis reignited in Ukraine. Pro-Russian activists seized government buildings in the eastern city of Donetsk and urged Russian President Vladimir Putin to send his forces there. 20 years after the Rwandan genocide, in ceremonies across the country, survivors commemorate the 800,000 people killed in just 100 days. Welcome back to the news today. This is the Daily Debate. The clock is ticking and the time is running out, but despite the pressure, it looks like the Israelis and the Palestinians both are sticking to their corners on the terms that would bring both sides back to the negotiating table. And only then could they start negotiating on the issues on the core of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So we are still looking for the map to find the road, which seems that we're not finding it. Today, maybe I will try to find it with the help of Dimitri Diliani, member of Fatah Revolutionary Council. Good evening.
Good evening.
And Calev Mayers, founder of Jerusalem Institute of Justice. Good evening.
Good evening to both of you.
No road, no map, no negotiation, so maybe we should not have this debate.
Well, okay, I'm off. Can we go home now?
No, not yet.
Okay.
But it seems that, again, we're reaching a deadlock. How come?
I think the reason we're reaching a deadlock is because the whole idea of a two-state solution is a bad idea. It's something that's been raised since 1947 with the partition plan that was completely rejected by the Arab League, although it was embraced by Israel. And from that time until today, it keeps on popping up, and everybody is saying this is the only solution. We have to create a two-state solution. I'm of the opinion that Israel's worst mistake was not completely annexing Judea and Samaria in 1967. I think that will be the way to move forward and resolve this issue of the occupation of the disputed territories between Israel and the Palestinians. I'm for creating one state for two peoples. I think the ideal way would be to do this in an agreement with the Palestinians and even create some kind of federation with a Hebrew-speaking canton and an Arabic-speaking canton. The two-state solution is not the only possible solution to the Middle East conflict, but we keep on coming back, and I think it's an impossibility. I think it's an impossibility because Israel is talking about 1967, whereas I think the Palestinians are still talking about 1948. I don't think there is a Palestinian leader today that can accept a Jewish state within the borders of Israel.
Before I will ask you if a one-state solution will put Israel in danger geographically and from a lot more aspects, I will ask you, Dimitri, are the Palestinians looking and maybe at the past and only at 1948 and not at 1967?
Well, that was obvious. We have recognized the state of Israel. We have changed our covenant. Even the most radical groups have accepted two-state solution. Now, what's been said about one-state solution, I think that would be ideal. I don't think any Palestinian would mind under one condition: equal rights, true democracy. Then I don't think there will be a chance for anybody talking about a Jewish state, because it will be a state for everybody. But since the ideology on which the state of Israel was built on, to be a homeland for the Jews, does not allow for the Jews to be a minority after very few years if there was one state solution. And at the same time, us as human beings, we will not accept to have less of rights or different rights. So if we're talking equal rights, one state for all, equal rights, let's shake hands on this right now and start working hard on it, starting after this program is over. But I don't think the people of Israel are ready for something like that, and I don't think that the religious right, especially the national religious right, will accept anything like that, because they are looking for one state, two systems. If we're talking about one state, one system, we're in it. If you talk about one state, two systems, like what Naftali Bennett trying to impose, well, that's not going to work.
Dimitri Diliani, you just met Calev Mayers. I believe that Calev has a rabbit in his hat.
No, there's no rabbit in my hat. I think that equality, the only place that I would suggest limiting equality would be the right of return. I think that the Jews should continue to have a right of return to this area. I think that there should not be a right of return for the descendants of Palestinian refugees from 1948, because at that time there was this huge population transfer in post-World War II, whereas the State of Israel absorbed the 850,000 Jewish refugees that were expelled from Middle Eastern countries. The Middle Eastern countries did not absorb the 720,000 Palestinians that went there or any of their descendants. And so this is a problem. And I think those people need to be absorbed in the nations where they exist. Then there's really no demographic threat. And so that way I think we could have equality within the borders of Israel. But I want to come back to this issue of the Palestinians recognizing the State of Israel, even the most radical elements. I'd beg to differ. First of all, the Hamas has never recognized the State of Israel. That is a very radical element. And even the PLO in 1974 put the 10-point plan on the table, which said that peace with Israel means taking apart Jewish sovereignty piece by piece. And that has never been canceled.
I want to ask
Let me, because there was so much going
No,
on.
please.
Well, the 1974, you're right, it happened there, but it was not part of the covenant, and the covenant was as a whole changed. Actually, it was a DFLP proposal that was voted on at that conference,
right,
and then never got followed through and was canceled, or anything that it relied on with the covenant.
But Palestinian leaders continue to bring it up when they're speaking.
Let me finish this up. In the presence of a U.S. president, Bill Clinton, when he was in Gaza. So we got this over with. If we're talking about for Jews to freely come and live in Palestine or Israel at that time, or whatever you want to call it, that state, and Palestinians cannot do that just because they're not Jews, I don't know if you have a clear understanding of what racism is, because that is exactly racism, to give you an extra right because of your religion. I don't think a democracy can tolerate.
Your party is trying to create a Jew-free state. That is racism. Removing the 350,000 settlers from the West Bank, that is racism.
Excuse me, according to international law, these are illegal settlers.
I beg to differ. According to international law, Israel has every right to settle there.
How's that? That's a UN recognized state of Palestine on the border of 1967.
The UN did not recognize the state of Palestine on the borders of 1967.
Well, what happened in 2 years ago, a year and a half ago? That was a UN recognition. That's all we got to do.
It didn't mention borders, did it?
No. Then you didn't. No, you should go and review it, because the submission, the application basically says the state of Palestine.
Sir, there is no Palestinian state within the borders of 1967.
Well, United Nations beg to differ. More states recognize that state of Palestine, the states that recognize Israel. But again, I'm willing to go back to your point and to your proposal. Try to treat me as a human, I'll treat you as a human, equal rights, let's go for it. Yeah. But as long as you're talking about one state, two systems, there is no democracy in the world that can tolerate that, and no nation in the world will accept that upon itself, and we are one of them.
Let me try to imagine Switzerland here in the Middle East.
Yes.
And let me try to imagine a fairy tale that
You'd
the
have
Palestinians...
to change the climate as well.
The fairy tale that the Palestinians and the Israelis can live happily ever after in one state, under one sovereignty, under one government. How would the government look like? Because I don't see a government where maybe Saeb Erekat is sitting next to Naftali Bennett, for example. It looks kind of problematic, I have to say.
It's been
even hard to imagine, even in my best dreams or my worst dreams.
It's been done before, but I would say if it's impossible to reach a Swiss federation system, then Israel should offer citizenship to all the Arabs living in Judea and Samaria, and do a unilateral annexation of the West Bank, and grant equal rights to everybody living there, whether you're Jew, Arab, Christian, Muslim, or belong to any other...
So basically in 50...
You know the end of that story. But in 5 or 6 years, non-Jews would be the majority between Jordan River and...
How do you come to these numbers?
In numbers.
Today there's 6.1 million Jews, 3 million Palestinians.
3 million. There's a million and a half in Gaza. You don't count them?
Are we talking about Gaza? I'm not talking about Gaza.
Part and parcel of this. You cannot talk of anything about
Gaza is a part and parcel, right? The Hamas is a part and parcel of PLO.
When you talk about Gaza,
that's a completely different state, completely different government.
It's not a different
state. It's a radical Islamic dictatorship that first needs to make peace with the PLO, and then maybe it can make peace with Israel.
There are Palestinian people there that the sole legitimate representative of them is the PLO. Hamas doesn't even object to that. Why would you? Why would you stick your nose in our business
If there's so legitimate representatives of PLO, why did they vote for the Hamas? The Hamas was voted in democratic elections.
It was voted in the parameters of Oslo that you have agreed to.
And if Mahmoud Abbas wasn't afraid of having new elections, he would have had them a long time ago, because you haven't had elections for 7 years. Because apparently in the polls, the Hamas still has popularity in Gaza.
No, then you haven't been following things. And even if they had, it really, having elections have nothing to do with our predictions on the outcome. We will accept democracy and we cherish it as it is.
Today you're not a democracy,
we have handed over
Today the Palestinian Authority is not a democracy.
Israel is democracy.
The first thing that the Palestinian Authority did...
You occupy other people and you're trying to convince me you're a democracy. You military rule 3.5 million Palestinians, and you surround.
You have no freedom of expression, no freedom of press, no freedom of assembly, no freedom of religion.
We do more than you do. Would you?
The only one who has freedom of expression is Mahmoud Abbas.
Today, Tel Aviv University prohibited an Israeli citizen from giving a speech and a lecture within its parameters. Do you call that a democracy?
You
put
certainly a greater democracy than the Palestinian Authority.
Absolutely not. You have democracy for the Jews. You don't have democracy for his citizens. Not at all.
Gentlemen. Please, if I want my viewers to hear you and hear what you have to say. I know that you're having fun. Of course you will go shake hands afterwards.
It's like ping pong at school.
But let's try to understand. I want to take you back on track, and I want to take you back to the peace process. It seems that the last suggestion of the Palestinians, it seems that the list of demands that Abu Mazen brought on the table, it seems that Abu Mazen knows that he won't get all these demands from the Israelis, and it seems that Abu Mazen was ready to get a big no from Israel and was ready to accept the big no and to blast the peace process.
If you give me enough time to explain what are these so-called demands. First of all, they are agreed upon matters with the number of prime ministers of Israel. One of them is to stop the settlement activity. No settlement activity. That was agreed upon. 2, the release of 1,027 prisoners in Israeli jails. That was agreed with Olmert. The release of the rest of the 104 pre-Oslo prisoners. That was agreed on in 1995. It was agreed on in Sharm el-Sheikh in 99, and it was agreed on 9 months ago, and still Israel did not execute. Reopening of national institutions in Jerusalem, Palestinian national institutions in Jerusalem. That was also agreed on, and that was mentioned even in the roadmap of George Bush.
So how come
everything, excuse me, let me finish this. Exactly. Because Netanyahu and his settler coalition live in La La Land. They do not read what their predecessors have agreed on. We are holding on to that. The whole Oslo...
Because Netanyahu cares about the security of Israel. That is the biggest problem. And Netanyahu wants the Palestinian Authority to recognize a Jewish state within the land of Israel. That's the biggest problem.
That's a new thing,
Mahmoud Abbas already received 75% of the reason that he came to the table. He wanted to release these thousands of prisoners. They received 3 out of 4 releases. Israel didn't receive anything. So far, I see the table very much tilted in the direction of the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority isn't even willing to say, we recognize Israel as a Jewish state. And so, the prisoners, the murderers of innocent Israelis continue to be released into the streets.
Before we tailor to new items on the table, let's execute what we have agreed on, and then you can suggest things, and then we reject them or accept them.
The Palestinian Authority has systematically broken every agreement we came to in Oslo,
Would you name
so it's not in your interest.
Would you name few, please?
I want to know if you can...
Because Molcho couldn't. Would you? Because he needs help. Tzipelivni could not. She needs help. Go help her out. She could not name one.
You know,
Martin Indyk could not name one in negotiation, last negotiations.
How about changing the education system of the Palestinian Authority, which calls for continued violent jihad against the Jews? You have one, sir.
I'll tell you something. I'll tell you, that's not one. First of all, the education system, the curriculum is overseen by the international community, according to the agreements, and we have addressed that. If you have a problem with that, pick it up with the United States and the EU that supervise our curriculum. But I'll tell you something about the settler education.
They don't supervise it, but they fund it.
Religious schools in settlements in the West Bank that call us monkeys, that call for the killing of Palestinian children. No such thing?
No such thing.
I'll give you a gift.
We're called monkeys and Jews. You're called human beings.
No, you were
There's no
called
such
by
thing as
others.
Jews.
You were called by others, not Palestinians, not in our education books, but we have freedom of speech. They can call you whatever they want.
That's a blatant
You have
lie.
1 minute, gentlemen. 1 minute. Only 1 minute. I want to reverse the blame game. How can you blame yourselves, which means the Israeli side and the Palestinian sides, about the collapse of this peace negotiation? You have 30 seconds. One sentence.
I think Israel's to blame for trying to pursue a solution which really cannot happen. I think two states within Judea and Samaria is an impossibility. We cannot remove 350,000 citizens and maintain a government. It's impossible.
I blame the president for accepting to enter these negotiations without clear guarantees that settlement activity will stop.
You cannot blame yourselves. This is unbelievable. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this. And we're going out for a small break, 2 minutes break. Can you shake hands, please, here and not outside?